call to order for the Wetlands Board for James City County for this July 12th meeting. The responsibility of this board is to carry out locally the Commonwealth policy to preserve the wetlands and to accommodate economic activity so as to prevent their despoliation. Could I have a roll call, please, Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Roadley?
Here.
Ms. Bowie?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mr. May?
Here.
Mr. Dunn?
Here. Everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes from last month's meeting, June 14th.
Yes.
There are no changes. I make a motion to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, for tonight's public hearings, there will be a staff presentation followed by any questions or clarifications from the board. Then the public hearing will be opened. At that time, anybody wishing to speak may do so once called upon by the chair. All public speakers must state their name and address for the record. Presentations before the board are subject to time limits. After everyone wishing to speak have done so, the public hearing will be closed and discussion amongst the board will start. The first case, WJPA Tech 23 Tech 007 at 3096 North Riverside Drive for the installation of a pier, boathouse, riprap, and living shoreline. Mr. Long.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Trevor Long, James City County Watershed Planner, here to present WJPA-23-0007. Mr. Daniel Winall of Water's Edge Construction, LLC, has applied for a wetlands permit on behalf of Mr. Jeffrey and Ms. Jacqueline Stephen for the installation of a sill with beach nourishment on property located at 3096 North Riverside Drive within the Yarmouth Creek watershed. This parcel can be seen on your screens above, outlined here in blue. This is within the Chickahominy Haven subdivision and the Yarmouth Creek watershed. An aerial photograph shown above. Again, that parcel is outlined here in blue. There is riverfront access here. Some topography. There's a very gentle slope back towards an existing failed bulkhead that abuts to the river. The resource protection area as it affects this property, and the floodplain. The applicants are proposing to construct a 40 linear foot riprap sill with beach nourishment to mitigate shoreline erosion occurring on the property. The area landward of the sill, which is approximately 1,120 square feet, is proposed to be planted to install a beach nourishment project. This project is proposed between mean low water and mean high water. Therefore, this project must be heard by this board. On the site plan above, we do have mean low water outlined here in blue, and mean high water, which comes up right to the property line, with the area of proposed beach nourishment outlined here in yellow, and the darker blue indicating the breakwater or sill in this location. A nice cross section for you all to see, the sill being in this triangular shape here, with the beach nourishment to the left on this photograph, which comes up to the existing slope and where the existing bulkhead currently is. Existing conditions of the property include a degraded concrete bulkhead, which can be viewed on the screens above, which is landward of various bald cypress trees within the tidal zone. Roots from these cypress trees extend up into the yard. The applicants are proposing to access the site from the uplands, and there are no vegetated wetland impacts within the tidal zone anticipated with this project. The Virginia Institute of Marine Science provided a comment letter that stated submerged aquatic vegetation, otherwise known as SAVs, which is likely hydrilla, exist at mean low water and extend approximately 200 feet seaward. According to the letter, the proposed breakwaters would result in approximately 600 square feet of SAV loss. However, because of the configuration of the bald cypress roots, the applicants have expressed that an alternate approach to shoreline management, such as replacing the bulkhead, would damage portions of these trees. Again, the site photograph on your screens above does show that this existing bulkhead is beginning to fail. The temporary fix that the applicants have been currently using is sandbags and concrete rocks to help mitigate this issue. It is also beginning to fail further down this wall as well. So we're kind of standing, looking straight out towards the river where the beach nourishment would be occurring, and the sill even further seaward from that. And a better photograph of both the area of beach nourishment and that sandbag approach that currently is being taken. As published in the Virginia Register on July 11th, 2005, the revised Wetland Mitigation Compensation Policy and Supplemental Guidelines, Regulation 4 VAC 20-39010, Virginia as a Chesapeake Bay program partner, is committed to achieve a no net loss of existing wetlands acreage and function in the signatories' regulatory programs. In order for a proposed project to be authorized to impact wetlands and compensate for the wetland loss in some prescribed manner, the following 3 criteria must be met. All reasonable mitigative efforts, including alternative siting, which would eliminate or minimize wetland loss or disturbance, must be incorporated in the proposal. The proposal must clearly be water dependent in nature. The proposal must demonstrate clearly its need to be in the wetlands and its overwhelming public and private benefits. If the proposed project cannot meet one or more of the above criteria, the project must be denied or must occur in areas outside of wetlands. However, should it satisfy all 3 criteria, then compensation for the wetland loss is required. The sequence of acceptable mitigation options should be as follows: on-site, off-site within the same watershed, mitigation banks in the same watershed, or a payment of an in lieu fee. If compensation is required, it should be a condition of this permit. Staff has reviewed this application and finds that this project meets the 3 criteria outlined above. While there are no vegetated impacts to wetlands associated with this project, this permit request must be heard by the board because the project occurs within mean low and mean high water. The applicants have proposed to plant the area of beach nourishment with wetland plantings. Staff has reviewed the above application and recommends approval of the application as presented. Should the board wish to approve the application, staff suggests the following conditions be incorporated into its approval: that the applicant must obtain all other necessary local, state, and federal permits, that all development activities located in the special flood hazard area shall comply with the James City County zoning ordinance and receive all required approvals and permits prior to the commencement of such activities, that a surety of $2,000 must be submitted prior to the start of this project, and that this wetlands permit for this project shall expire on July 12th, 2026 if construction has not begun, and that if an extension of this permit is needed, a written request shall be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than May 31st, 2026, just 6 weeks prior to the expiration date of this permit. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Mr. Chairman, is the retaining wall that's there supposed to remain and just be buried by the proposed sand?
It's not my understanding. I will let the contractor speak more to that.
Do the VMRC weigh in on the hydrilla being an invasive species at all?
I do know that was brought up to them, and they did weigh in on that. I am not aware of the outcome of that, however.
Any other questions for Mr. Long? Thank you.
Thank you.
We go ahead and open the. Oh, yep. Please state your.
Afternoon. I'm Danny Winall with Water's Edge Construction up in Toanna. I do want to make one correction to the staff report. I'm not Water's Edge LLC. I'm Water's Edge Construction. Water's Edge LLC is somebody else. That's not us. But anyway, I'm here to answer any questions y'all got. Your question about the retaining wall, we plan on taking the top foot or so off of it. There's a lot of cypress knees in that area. That's why one of the reasons we went with a living shoreline. So we don't want to disturb them any more than possible. So we'll take a foot of it off so we get a good layer of sand over top of it. So that's the reason for that.
Is that laid in there or is it driven?
It's laid in, it's a concrete / masonry / sandbag wall. It's been there since probably the 60s, so it probably won't take much to take it out.
Any concern for your vegetation plantings, given the shade that's there under there?
There's gonna be some shade, 3 square and Peyton's is really, in that brackish environment, that's about all you can do there.
So those sandbags and cinder blocks will be removed and then?
Yeah, all the sandbags will be gone, the cinder blocks, what you saw, the loose stuff, all that stuff will be removed. And, maybe the top layer of the bulkhead, we'll just see how we get into construction. But we want to have it at least covered up by a foot of sand, so there's no issues with it being exposed during a storm.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak on this matter? If not, I will close the public hearing and open it for board considerations.
Mr. Chairman, I have very few comments. At living shoreline approach to shoreline stabilization. I likely would have recommended they leave a little bit of that retaining wall in just as a safeguard during a catastrophic event, maybe to help. But yeah, I don't have any issues with the project.
Yeah, I mean, I concur. It's unusual to see a living shoreline at Chickahominy Haven, but yeah, it'd be a good trend.
I agree with my colleagues. I would make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the permit request for Wetlands Board, case number WJPA 230007 at 3096 North Riverside Drive.
So we have a motion to adopt. Mr. Roadley,
Yes?
Ms. Bowie,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, there are no board considerations. There are no matters of special privilege. Motion to adjourn?
Moved. We'll call to order the July 12th, 2023 Chesapeake Bay Board. It is the responsibility of this board to carry out locally the Commonwealth policy to protect against and minimize pollution and deposition of sediment in wetlands, streams, and lakes in James City County, which are tributaries to the Chesapeake Bay. Roll call, Mr. Wilson?
Ms. Bowie, Mr. O'Brien,
Here.
Mr. May,
Here.
Mr. Dunn,
Here.
Mr. Roadley.
Here. You have the minutes from the June 14th meeting. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, there is a motion to approve the minutes from Wednesday, June 14th as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The outline for tonight's public hearings will be a staff presentation, followed by any questions or clarifications from the board, and then the public hearing will be opened. At that time, anybody wishing to speak may do so once called upon by the chair. All public speakers must state their name and address for the record. After everyone wishing to speak have done so, the public hearing will be closed and discussion amongst the board will start. The first item on the agenda is CBPA 23-0054 at 3520 Barrett's Ferry Drive. Mr. Long.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Trevor Long, James City County Watershed Planner. Ms. Angelina Nanthrum has requested a referral of this application for exception to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance while the site plan is being finalized for this project. Staff concurs with this request. As this case has been publicly noticed, staff recommends the public hearing be opened and stay open until the August meeting, at which time the case will be heard.
Very good. The next item on the agenda.
Excuse me, Mr. Roadley, you have to open the public hearing, please.
Sorry. Open the public hearing. Any comments or questions on this matter?
Go ahead and postpone it to the August.
We will
9th board
postpone
meeting.
till the August 9th meeting. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Next item on the agenda is CBPA 23-0001 at 4105 South Riverside Drive.
Afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Trevor Long, Jameson County Watershed Planner. Mr. Chase Grogg of Land Tech Resources, Inc. has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Mr. William Taylor for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of a retaining wall located at 4105 South Riverside Drive. This parcel can be viewed above on your screens in a vicinity map. Again, this parcel is located within the Chickahominy Haven subdivision and the Yarmouth Creek watershed. Parcel was platted in 1965 prior to the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. This parcel can be seen via this aerial photograph above. This is the existing house as it stands now. The topography, a very minor slope coming from the road back towards the river. And the RPA is affects this property, coming approximately halfway through the existing house. The floodplain as it affects this property encompasses the majority of this area and the entirety of this lot. Total lot size of this property is 0.41 acres, of which 51% is located within the RPA. These RPA lines can be shown above here in red, with the furthest RPA line being the 100-foot resource protection area, and the RPA line closest to the water being the seaward 50-foot RPA line. Existing conditions of this property include a single-family dwelling with a patio and walkway. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing home and construct a new single-family dwelling with a retaining wall. So the house that is seen on these aerial photographs would be demolished and rebuilt. The demolition and construction of a new single-family dwelling, however, is being approved administratively, as this is considered redevelopment under Section 23-7A2, and total impacts associated with proposed retaining walls, which is being proposed around the perimeter of this property, equate to 189 square feet. So on this site plan above, you see two different colors. The area of the retaining wall of which occurs within the landward 50-foot RPA is here in yellow, and the area occurring in the seaward 50-foot RPA is shown here in orange. The entirety of the retaining wall comes approximately to the street, with it being denoted on this plan as end of retaining wall. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 8 shrubs. Some site photographs. We're looking back towards the river, so this section here would have a small retaining wall at it. Looking down the river and to the corner of the yard, this is where the retaining wall would make a turn and come back towards the street. Again, the river is this area in the background. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of a retaining wall. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the construction of the retaining wall extends into the seaward 50-foot RPA and is considered accessory in nature. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception request is a minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicant any special privileges denied by Chapter 23 to other property owners similarly situated in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony and purpose of the intent of Chapter 23 and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are either self-created or self-imposed, nor does it arise from circumstances that are non-conforming, and that reasonable and appropriate conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with the proposal to be minor for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval of this exception request, and if the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into its approval. The applicant must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required. An affidavit must be recorded in the Williamsburg-James City County Courthouse prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicant must submit a mitigation plan equating to 8 shrubs to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division prior to the project start. The applicant must submit a surety of $500 to guarantee these plantings. That this exception request will become null and void if construction is not begun by July 12th, 2024, and that written requests for an extension, if needed, must be submitted no later than May 31st, 2024, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date of this permit. Thank you very much. Be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions for staff?
Was there any, do you have pictures of any evidence of erosion that is taking place? Is the fence, chain link fence coming out and that's where they're gonna put the retaining wall?
Yes, that is my understanding. The retaining wall would go in approximately the same location as the fence. And if this pathway here would be where the steps are going. I do not believe I have a terrible amount of photos showing any evident erosion.
Is the intent, after taking the single dwelling down, to put in more landfill to elevate the building envelope, thus the need for the retaining walls on the side?
Yes, that is my understanding. I do believe the contractor is here, and I'll let him speak more to that portion as well.
Any more questions for staff?
Thank you.
We will open the public hearing. Mr. Grog?
Back to the site.
Thanks. Good evening, members of the board. Nice to see you again. Chase Grog with Land Tech Resources, 205 Bullifonts Boulevard, Williamsburg, Virginia, 23188. Just to give a quick overall of the project, there's two, staff mentioned one of them, there's two aspects to the project that are being approved basically administratively. One is the home. The current home sits 1 foot below the flood elevation. So even on some of the lower tides, there's water that gets into the house. So after owning the property about 16 years, the goal of this project is to destroy that house to be able to raise the home. The home isn't any closer to the water, which is along the lines of the admin approval. And so now the first floor for this house sits 1 foot above the base flood elevation. So that is the main purpose of this retaining wall. And that's correct that the wall will go along what's already the improved yard and basically ties in over here. The neighbor to the left has an existing bulkhead. So it was kind of a nice point to be able to tie it in. The other part of this project that was approved separately is there's an existing failing bulkhead out here, and that bulkhead is going to be replaced as is in the same location. So the reason we're setting this wall back is so we're able to save some of these trees out by the water, have the bulkhead, and then, just have a, kind of keep the yard that's there and just be able to lightly slope it and push this, so this 7 foot elevation, trying to push that flood zone as far away from the house as possible. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Grog? Thank you. Discussion amongst the board. I don't see any particular real issue with this, given the existing landscape on that particular lot and the proposed use. So for me, this is not a onerous application.
I concur, Mr. Chairman. I think that what they're doing makes sense. That the house is below the flood, so they've got to get it up.
I have a motion.
Chair, I make a motion to I make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case number CBPA TAC 23 TAC 0001 at 4105 South Riverside Drive.
We have a motion to adopt. Ms. Bowie? Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Roadley?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
The next matter before us is CBPA 23-0030 at 153 Shinnecock. Ms. Benedict.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Robin Benedict, Watershed Planner, presenting CBPA 23-0030. Mr. Chase Grogg with Atlantic Resources has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Mr. Howard Jones for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of a single-family dwelling with an attached deck located at 153 Shinnecock within the Fords Colony subdivision and the Powden Creek watershed. On screen above, you can see the subject parcel outlined here in blue, again in Fords Colony, and then the Powhatan Creek watershed boundary shown in yellow. This parcel was platted in 1989 prior to the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. Here is aerial photography of the property. The total size of this property is 0.41 acres. Here is topography at the site. JCSA easements on the property. The resource protection area as it affects this site, 90% of the property is within the RPA. And the floodplain as it affects this property. This lot is constrained by approximately 3,881 square feet of wetlands, and then has the 20-foot drainage and utility easement, the JCSA easement on it as well. This is the BMP flow path, so the subject parcel outlined in blue again. This does discharge directly into wetlands as indicated by these arrows. It does not follow the BMP flow path shown in green. The applicant is proposing to construct a single-family dwelling with an attached deck as shown in the site plan above. So you see the 150-foot resource protection areas shown in red. The edge of wetlands, there are two wetland systems, one shown up here outlined in green and another right through here. The floodplain is this light blue line that runs through a portion of the home. The area in yellow is the driveway that is within the landward 50-foot RPA, and the orange is the proposed house, garage, and a portion of the driveway that is within the seaward 50-foot RPA. That JCSA easement is shown here in purple. The building setback line shown in blue, and then the limits of clearing. Total impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 627 square feet of impacts to the landward 50-foot RPA and 2,766 square feet of impacts to the seaward 50-foot RPA, for a total of 3,393 square feet of impacts. Additionally, there are 1,404 square feet of permanent wetland impacts proposed with the construction of the home, and that is shown through this wetland system right here. Minimum first floor square footage required for this section of Fords Colony is 1,500 square feet. This proposed house has a first floor square footage equal to 2,000 square feet, which is 33% more than the minimum. The impervious cover for this proposal is 4,797 square feet, which requires 12 planting units, 12 canopy trees, 24 understory trees, and 36 shrubs. The applicant has submitted a mitigation plan that satisfies this requirement. And additionally, the applicant has proposed the installation of 3 best management practices, or BMPs, in the form of micro bioretention pools on the property. Those are shown here above, one next to the garage, to the left of the house, and then one on the back right corner of the house. Staff is also requesting that an affidavit be recorded in the Williamsburg James City County Courthouse due to the environmental sensitivity of this lot. For reference, this is the mitigation plan that they have provided. Again, it is 12 planting units, the areas in green being the areas of mitigation. Here's site photography, standing at the street and looking into the flagstone portion of this property. Moving forward, the flags indicating the driveway. Looking, you see the stake here, a front corner of the house. Looking towards the wetland system that will be impacted by the construction of the home, and the wetland system back behind the proposed house. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of a single-family dwelling with an attached deck. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the construction of the single-family dwelling and deck extends into the seaward 50-foot RPA. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicant any special privileges denied to other property owners in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, and reasonable conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with this proposal to be major for the proposed development. Staff believes that this proposal does not meet condition number 1 stated above. However, if the board wishes to approve this request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicant must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. An affidavit must be recorded in the Williamsburg-James City County Courthouse prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicant must submit a surety of $9,000 in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plantings and BMP construction. The applicant must place 3 inches of gravel underlain with filter fabric underneath the footprint of the deck. This exception request approval will become null and void if construction has not begun by July 12th, 2024, and written requests for an extension must be submitted no later than May 31st, 2024, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this case has been in front of the board before, correct?
Yes, sir. It was heard at the May 10th meeting.
And then they asked for a deferral, is that correct?
Yes.
Robin, can you highlight any changes to the plan that have occurred since May?
The only change to the plan since the May meeting is the addition of the 3 microbiome retention ponds. Other than that, the site plan remains unchanged.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. We'll open the public hearing. Mr. Grogg.
Good evening, members of the board. Chase Grogg with Land Tech Resources again, 205 Bullifonts Boulevard, Williamsburg, Virginia, 23188. Thank you, staff, for your project overview of 153 Shinnecock. This case, as you remember, was first brought to the board at your May 10th meeting. At that time, while listening to the board's discussion, we made the decision to defer the case to a later meeting so that we would be able to address 2 issues. While requesting the deferral, I asked if the board could provide their input on what was providing the biggest issues with getting to a point of approval. 2 issues were brought forward. The first one I would like to address was one member mentioning the potential for a detriment to water quality. In the 2 months since the May meeting, we looked at alternative ways to be able to treat some water, even with groundwater and flood zone issues. After much thought, we decided to go with a solution that is utilized more in an urban setting, but will bring the needed water quality treatment to the property. 3 above-ground micro-bioretention basins will be placed at 3 corners of the home and will have roof leaders directed to them to be able to treat the initial flush of 1 inch of rainfall. Just like our in-ground bioretention designs, these micro-bioretention basins will consist of 12 inches of stone with a 6-inch perforated pipe in the bottom. That layer will be followed by 3 inches of pea gravel and 18 inches of soil media. The top will then have 3 inches of mulch and required vegetation planted in the soil media. The basins will be able to pond 6 inches of water on top of the mulch before going into a raised catch basin and out the bottom 6-inch pipe onto the ground and sheet flow from there. These micro bioretention cells have enabled us to be able to treat over 1,500 square feet of our impervious within the RPA, or 3 times our additional square footage requested. The second issue, which was brought up by 2 board members, was setting a precedent for approving a Ford's Colony house, which was 33% more than the minimum square footage. Last month, CBPA-23-0044, located at 112 North Turnberry, did just that. The now approved project proposed a home 75% over the minimum square footage required in Ford's Colony. As you are aware, one of the considerations the board must make is granting the exception will not confer upon the applicants any special privileges denied by Chapter 23 Chesapeake Bay Preservation of the James City County Code to other property owners similarly situated in the vicinity. Seeing as our project is located within the same subdivision, 830 feet away, and drains to the same resource, I do not see how we can be held to a stricter square footage requirement. Based on our enhanced stormwater treatment and now minimal increased home square footage, we ask for your approval of the project. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, as well as the homeowner is here. I also have a picture just for a visual of what the above ground micro-bioretentions may look like. Again, seen more in an urban setting, as you'll see here, but an above ground design, same layers, just like the cake in the ground at cake above. So the water will flow from the roof leaders into these. Not seen in this picture here will be an under drain that will come out the bottom. In discussion with Mr. Wilson, we also decided that instead of the water cascading over the side of it, which may cause erosion on the ground level, that we would just install a pipe with a catch basin on top to allow that water during a heavy rain to flow through that and out the bottom. So the house isn't disturbed and the ground isn't disturbed. I also have the PDF from our previous meeting showing all the surrounding square footages for this section as well, just as a reminder. That's on the desktop too, Mike. Thank you, sir. These are all the square footages. Again, GIS doesn't allow us to pull out square footage alone, but these are all the homes, in our surrounding area. And the home stated in my presentation is 830 feet directly to the east. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Grogg?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Groggs, you mentioned that adding these micro-bioretention systems, how much square footage is that going to, did you say it was like a third?
It's going to capture 1,500 square feet. And my statement was that was 3 times. So our home at the moment is 500 square feet above the minimum square footage. So we're capturing over
1,500.
Yeah, 1,500, which is 3 times over what we're requesting.
All right, thank you.
And where is the lot?
Our lot is that top lot.
16.
Yep.
Okay. These are total square footage, right?
That's correct, including ours as well.
Any other questions for Mr. Grogg? Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else care to address the board on this matter? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. The matter is before the board.
Mr. Chair, I was one that mentioned in the last time we heard this case, my concerns about the minimum necessary to required relief as far as square footage on the home goes. But I do like the applicant's approach at adding those micro-bioretention systems that is going to mitigate some of that water to potentially allow for some extra square footage. So based on this new plan here, I would be more in support of this project.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the board or questions? I will concur that I appreciate the applicant adding the microbiome retention. It is one step in the right direction to help address potential water quality issues in the long term. So do appreciate that.
I concur, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate, I am probably the other person who mentioned the water treatment and the square footage. And I do appreciate the efforts to put the bioretention pond in. I still do feel that we need to maintain, for responsible development of these areas, the minimal footprint. Mr. Grog brings up a great point, and but I still think that if we abandon the precedent that completely that we've been following for the past, couple of years, this is, opens up to, what do we enforce?
I appreciate your comments. We are obviously considering these cases on a case-by-case basis. Each project is reviewed under its individual merits, but I do appreciate the sentiment. Any additional questions or comments?
Yeah, the only comment I'll make is that if it was just a standalone look at this based upon minimum square footage, there would be an issue there, but you've got to take the entirety of what they're trying to do into consideration on this particular case, and I think the microbiome retention ponds are a good step in that direction.
Mr. Chair, would there be any opportunity for an additional, so that we had 4 of the retention ponds as opposed to 3?
A fair question. Excuse me, a fair question. I will have to open up the public hearing and ask for Mr. Grog's response.
Ms. Bowie, my concern with that one is, since we are in Forts Colony, they have their architectural requirements. And the reason that we have these, I'll say strategically placed is, I have a feeling I can make a very good argument to them that these are behind the house and in the back could be incorporated into the deck to where they don't stand out. I think my answer is going to be, I'd be more than happy to look into it with Forts Colony and see if they would allow one in the front yard somewhere. I just don't know. On the front right, there's the easement there. So you'd be talking in front of the window, and I don't know that putting one next to, right on that side would be, there's the easement there. The only other place I could potentially see one is maybe here and catching, I guess, the front of this garage. Again, more than happy to look into that, but I don't know that I necessarily want to guarantee that we could get a 4th.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I'd also just like to point out that in this case, we're not just talking about the RPA. This is actually elimination of wetlands itself. And, the Stormwater Division isn't supporting it. I don't know how I can support this presentation as is.
Understood. Thank you very much. I will close the public hearing. The matter is before the board. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would, based on, I know we do look at these on a case-by-case basis. I know this is 33% above, and we really are trying to stick with the minimum necessary to afford relief. But I do feel, in my personal opinion, that adding the microbiome retention system is actually mitigating some of that, which, to me, I feel a little bit better going over to this extent. So I would make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case number CBPA 230030 at 153 Shinnecock.
Mr. Wilson.
Motion is to approve. Ms. Bowie?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
No.
Mr. Roadley?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Next item on the agenda is CBPA 23-0052 at 7260 Osprey Drive.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Robin Benedict, Watershed Planner, presenting CBPA 23-0052. Ms. Susan Cameron has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the approval of an accessory building and driveway extension located at 7260 Osprey Drive within the Chickahominy Haven subdivision and the Yarmouth Creek watershed. Above, you can see the subject parcel outlined here in blue and the Yarmouth Creek watershed outlined in yellow. This parcel was platted in 2004 after the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. This is an aerial from 2013 to show existing impervious and existing boat ramp on the property in this general area. Here's an aerial from 2019 showing site conditions, and then an aerial from 2023 showing changes to the property. The total lot size of this property is 1.35 acres. Here's the topography at the site, which is fairly flat. The resource protection area as it affects this property, 62% of the property is located within the RPA. The entirety of the property is located within the floodplain. In October of 2022, officials from the James City County Stormwater and Resource Protection Division received notice that an accessory structure and driveway extension had been installed on this property without the submission of a Chesapeake Bay Preservation Exception request. June 14th, last month, this applicant was before the board for the approval of this building and driveway extension, and this was the site plan submitted at that time. You'll see the 150-foot resource protection areas. The area in yellow is the impervious within the landward, and that's a majority of the building, and then the gravel on the side of the building and a portion of the driveway itself. And the orange is the impervious that is within the seaward. This is the site plan submitted today. Again, the 150-foot resource protection area, the impervious within the landward and the seaward. As mentioned earlier from the 2013 aerial, this is that existing impervious, which we are removing from the new impervious getting approved here tonight. And the applicants have proposed to remove these portions of gravel shown here in red. Impervious cover on the property equals approximately 3,774 square feet, of which 751 square feet was existing on the parcel prior to the project start. That is this pink area. The accessory structure and driveway expansion remain as unpermitted improvements to this property and require after-the-fact approval. Of the remaining impervious cover, the applicants are proposing to remove and revegetate approximately 2,120 square feet of existing gravel. That's the portion shown here in red. Of which 1,889 square feet is within the landward 50-foot RPA and 231 square feet is within the seaward 50-foot RPA. After all of these removals, total impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 767 square feet of impacts to the landward 50-foot RPA and 136 square feet of impacts to the seaward 50-foot RPA. Those are the remaining yellow and orange portions of this site plan. They total to 903 square feet of impacts. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 2 planting units. Because this exception request is being heard before the board after the fact, staff would require double the mitigation units, equating to 4 planting units. To reiterate, the applicants provided this site plan just showing those areas of gravel around the building and the portion of the driveway that they are proposing to remove. To reiterate the numbers again as well, the total existing impervious was 3,774 square feet. That existing boat ramp was a total of 751 square feet, and they're proposing to remove 2,120 square feet of gravel around that building. That leaves us with a total of 903 square feet getting approved or requesting to be approved here tonight. This is photography from 2015 provided by the applicant showing that existing boat ramp, the gravel underneath here. And this photo is from 2019 after the completion of the construction of this building. These are photographs taken last month of the building as it currently stands and its proximity to the water. This is the portion of the gravel that is proposed to be removed now. There is existing gravel alongside the building here, which is proposed to be removed. And this gravel on the other side of the building also proposed to be removed. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the approval of an accessory building and driveway extension. The application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the accessory building and driveway extension are considered accessory in nature. This exception request is also being heard by the board after the construction of the project. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicants any special privileges denied to other property owners in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, and reasonable conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with this proposal to be major for the proposed development. If the board wishes to approve this request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicant must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. All development activities located in the special flood hazard area must comply with floodplain area regulations, the James City County zoning ordinance, and received all required approval and permits prior to commencement of such activities. The applicant must submit a mitigation plan equating to 4 planting units to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division. The applicant must submit a surety of $3,000 in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plantings. An affidavit must be recorded in the Williamsburg-James City County Courthouse prior to the issuance of a building permit, and this exception request approval will become null and void if conditions 2 and 3 of this resolution are not fulfilled by August 12th, 2023. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Any questions for staff?
The 4 planning units based upon the revised impervious,
Yes, sir.
and is it double?
Yes, that is doubled.
Could you go back to the figures on the new proposed square footage changes?
This one?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. We will open the public hearing. Would the applicant care to address the board? Name and address, please.
Kevin Cameron. My wife here, Susan Cameron's here also. And thank you, Trevor and Robin. They've been a tremendous help, and they came out there, and I could tell they cared to actually put together a plan that might work for you guys. And you know, I'm here at your mercy, and I appreciate your time, and I'm here to answer any questions about it.
Any questions for the applicant? Appreciate your willingness to work with staff to come to a resolution. Thank you. If there's no questions, we'll move on. Thank you. Anybody else care to address the board? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. The matter is before the board.
Yeah, I would say, Mr. Chair, the applicants made a significant change to the original proposal by revegetating 2,120 square feet of area. So based on that, I would be willing to support this proposal.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case number CBPA 23-0052 at 7260 Osprey Drive.
Mr. Wilson,
Motion to adopt. Ms. Bowie,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Roadley.
yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
That concludes our cases this evening. Moving to board considerations. Mr. Wilson?
We have had two requests to speak before the board at a public comment period. We don't have one on our agenda, so the thought was to let them speak here at the board consideration process. There is a 3-minute time limit, after which time if the board wants to get into a discussion with them, they may. It's not required.
Thank you. Mr. Grog?
Good evening again. Thank you for giving me a quick second to talk. We do our best as consultants to bring the best project forward by working with your staff to ensure we check all the boxes we know you want to see. I appreciate the board regularly pointing out that I know the hot topic you want us and issues, and that we do our best to address them in both plan and presentation prior to questions. As a now monthly regular at these meetings and working through many Forts Colony's lots, I would like to make a recommendation. I think that for any proposed project with a new home or an addition located within any HOA with home square footage requirements, that a letter should be obtained by either the applicant or staff stating the requirements for that lot. There are some lots unlike Kingsmill and Forts Colony that don't have a staffed HOA office, so maybe just the covenants from there. I'm not aware of any neighborhoods that have a square footage requirement that don't have a manned HOA office, but just kind of throwing that in there. This will ensure the board has provided the correct information directly from the source. It also alleviates staff and applicants going back and forth on what the requirements are during a meeting. Though the current focus is Forts Colony, there are still vacant lots and other subdivisions that will have the same issue. Happy to discuss this now, later, or answer any questions. Again, thank you, board and staff, for giving me a couple minutes to discuss what I see as a current problem moving forward.
Thank you very much for those comments. I think what we'll do, Mr. Grog, is take comments submitted and collectively discuss and consider them.
Perfect.
But I appreciate you taking the time to present.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Mr. Roth?
Say that like I'm already guilty. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Matt Roth, president of Roth Environmental, 700 Prescott Circle, Newport News, Virginia. I present in front of numerous Chesapeake Bay boards and several iterations of this Chesapeake Bay board. I go back quite a ways. Mr. Roadley can attest to that. I know your job is very difficult. You get a variety of information in various forms, from wonderful design plans to things that are sketched out on an aerial photo, sometimes at best. So I know your job is tremendously difficult to do. And each project is based on its own merits and seen as a case-by-case basis. My job is to advise my clients to come in here and check off all your boxes, as Mr. Grogg stated. do as much bioretention as we can, minimize that first floor square footage, and do things that are in keeping with the Chesapeake Bay Act. I've had numerous clients over the years, because we're dealing with subdivisions like Ford's Colony and Kings Mill, where it's a lot of retired folks. I had one a few months back that between the couple, they had 4 replaced knees and 2 replaced hips. I had 5 letters from doctors coming here trying to get a 1-story house. It was in Ford's Colony, and it was recommended denial. And for them to get what they needed, they had to put an elevator in the house and go to a 2-story structure. And the wife, who had many more physical impairments, had a lot of trouble with that. But they had already bought the lot, so they were here. And so it's my belief that although we try to shoehorn anything in Ford's Colony into a one-size-fits-all, but I really don't believe that it does. And what you did tonight was really nice, because you allowed somebody to come in, and if they're willing to treat that stormwater, and they're willing to go forward and pay for the engineering design and actually pay for the construction of those bioretention areas, I think there should be at least a range that's given. I don't know if it's 100% additional first floor square footage. I think that's too much, but get there some sort of range or something that you can come into to where there's a trade-off. If you're willing to do this and treat the stormwater, then you do get a little bit of extra square footage in that first floor. Again, I'm still thinking about the folks that had those physical impairments. If there's an opportunity to discuss this or do a work session or something like that, I'd be more than happy to participate. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. I appreciate the opportunity that our colleagues have presented to us to have more discussion on this matter, and perhaps, Mr. Wilson, we can schedule that in the near term for a meeting and follow-up.
Certainly, we could schedule a work session, not only to discuss that issue, but also upcoming Chesapeake Bay ordinance revisions mandated by the state. Some of you are aware we're under a 3-year deadline to get our ordinance revised, and that deadline would be September of 2024. So we could wrap it all up into a work session here in the next 3 to 6 months by the end of the calendar year.
Sooner the better, in my opinion.
And you also have the bylaws to.
And the bylaws, correct. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any matters of special privilege, Mr. Wilson? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. We are adjourned.